Hi, my name is Malika Bender, and welcome to our Foundations of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion series. This is the first of several short videos meant to provide CAS members and leaders with a deeper understanding of the issues underlying our diversity efforts, as well as the tactics that we're using to address those issues. We'll also look at some commonly asked questions and misconceptions. And for this first session, we're focusing on two common questions that members have about our diversity efforts. So in the CAS, our diversity efforts are aimed at addressing underrepresentation of certain groups. So I'd like to lay the groundwork first by sharing some basic data. About 80% of our members are in the United States, so that's our proving ground for diversity efforts. This is where we have the best understanding of the issues and the most power to influence change. And we hope that by beginning to address our biggest issues in the US, we'll be able to apply those successful strategies to other regions. Our target dimensions of diversity initially are race and gender. Again, these are our first ports of call, and for similar reasons. The problems facing these groups are well documented, and we have a reasonable understanding of the barriers that we need to address. Now, that doesn't mean we won't look at other dimensions like LGBTQ+, disability, or veteran status, but again, this is our starting point. Now, on this slide, I'm showing the US population ages 25 and over for Indigenous, Black, and Latinx people across all genders, and for women across all races. CAS members in these groups are significantly underrepresented when compared to the US population. Indigenous people make up 0.1% of CAS members compared to 1% of the population. Black members make up only 1% compared to 12% of the population. Latinx members are 2% compared to 15% of the population, and women are 31% compared to 52% of the US population aged 25 and up. Now, this is the first question commonly asked by members. Why do we focus on race and gender? So first, I'd like to ask you, how do you define race and gender? Are they A, biological fact, B, social categories, or C, irrelevant? From a biological and genetics perspective, the distinctions between races as we define them today are extremely blurry. If anything, race may be more of a poor proxy for geographical differences. Gender is different from biological sex and describes those characteristics that are largely socially created. Even a quick internet search, though, will show that biological sex is not as cut and dry as we used to believe. The reality is that these are both social categories. Race and gender have nothing to do with a person's innate ability or potential to succeed as an actuary or in any other profession. But societal factors have different impacts on people in these different categories. They lead to different levels of access, encouragement, and resources, which can then lead to different career outcomes. So while these distinctions aren't scientific, there are still real implications, which is what we saw play out in the data that I just shared. That's why these are relevant categories for us in the CAS to focus on. There are a couple of important things to keep in mind, though. I talked about societal factors, and we in the CAS are part of this society. So this is our problem. The CAS doesn't exist in a vacuum. The decisions that we've made in the past have maintained the status quo, and the decisions that we make now and in the future can produce different outputs. I like to bring in an analogy that some actuaries may be able to identify with here. Let's say we built a computer program, but the outputs are not what we expected. So what we need to do is investigate our code to see if there are things built into the system that contribute to that unexpected outcome. Now, a lot of the discomfort from diversity efforts is that it makes those of us who made it into the profession feel guilty, like we had an unfair advantage or we didn't do something that we should have done before. But again, let's think of it as actuaries would. We built a system on old information, And now we have new relevant information. So we don't have to beat ourselves up about not knowing that information before, but it is part of our professional code to incorporate new relevant information into our assumptions when we become aware of them. So don't let hard feelings get in the way, but just do the work to update that model. Now, I know what some people are thinking. The outputs may not be what we expect because of the input data, right? So let's take a further look at the talent pipeline. For most of these groups, the pipeline is actually better than we give it credit for. I've added a row in the middle here showing the percentage of people graduating with degrees in mathematics in 2017 and 2018 in the US. Now, we don't have data on actuarial science majors by race, but for women, the numbers are pretty similar to what I'm showing here. And I'll note that CAS members are still well behind the mathematics pipeline. So what this data shows me is even though math and STEM still have their own challenges when it comes to diversity, the actuarial profession is competing with other STEM professions for talent, and we may be losing that competition. That said, I'm pretty sure it's within our control to win that battle if we can make some changes. And I'll just make another note here. As I said, I showed mathematics degrees, but we do have similar data for people working in the insurance industry that shows, again, our profession is behind the industry for these groups. So we still have some work to do. Now let's move on to our second most commonly asked question. The actuarial profession is A, a meritocracy, B, an exclusive club, or C, something in between. When we talk about diversity efforts with members, the concept of meritocracy is often brought up. People say, we're a meritocracy, so all that you have to do is work hard, study, pass exams, and you can be an actuary. So all this extra effort we're doing around diversity is not necessary because the people who deserve it get in. I think we need to define this word to understand it a bit better. A meritocracy is a system, organization, or society in which people are chosen and moved into positions of success, power, and influence on the basis of their demonstrated abilities and merit. But we know that the larger society in which we exist is not a pure meritocracy. So how can the actuarial profession, which is built on top of that society, be a true meritocracy itself? How can you demonstrate your abilities and merit as an actuary if you've never heard of the profession? How can you demonstrate your abilities and merit as an actuary if you get denied a job interview because of how your name sounds or the color of your skin? And how can you demonstrate your abilities and merit as an actuary if people continuously tell you from a young age that you'd be better suited to another path? And one more thing to remember, if the actuarial profession is a true meritocracy, how do we interpret that information I just showed, where the broader math profession has more equal representation of women, Black, and Latinx people compared to the population than our profession does? If you can demonstrate enough abilities and merit to work in mathematics, what barriers are preventing that level of representation in the actuarial profession? Fortunately, we know what some of those barriers are, and we do have the power to influence many of these. We can increase awareness of the profession as an exciting career option for these target groups. We can also make sure that the people who are most influential in their lives know enough to encourage them on this path from an early age. We can allocate resources to help students access high quality early math education. We can make sure that the financial cost of exams doesn't stop someone great from pursuing the profession. We can educate employers to reduce bias and discrimination in hiring. And we can work to help people see themselves represented among the current actuaries that we have today. So when we talk about diversity efforts, we're looking to remove the barriers that prevent people from demonstrating their ability and their merit. And I think if we can do that, the CAS can look more like the broader population in which we operate, and we may actually be on our way to that meritocracy that we strive for. If you have questions or feedback on these concepts or anything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at the CAS, you can send an email to diversity@casac.org. Thanks for taking the time to check out this session today, and I look forward to sharing the next video with you.